In the last episode, we used the PeopleTools JSON builder to generate a JSON structure. The JSON builder was delivered with PeopleTools 8.5.5, but not documented until 8.5.7. So, what if you're on an earlier tools release? Are there other options? Actually, there are. There's several. And in this episode, we will review one of them using the JSON.org JSON Java classes. These classes are delivered with PeopleTools today and have been for a few releases and are readily available online for those of you using an older version of PeopleTools. So let's use the same scenario as last time. We'll generate a simple JSON response that includes employee ID and effective date from an employee's job record. So this is what that end result is supposed to look like. Now, let's open Application Designer. And in Application Designer, I have the same app engine open as last episode. Let's add another step and action. And let's be sure to set the action to people code. And we don't need the prior step, so I'm going to disable that prior step. And the people code here, we want to reuse the SQL. We want to reuse a lot of this code. So let's just go ahead and clone that code into our other step as well. Now, the first thing we need to do here, since we're not using the JSON builder, first thing we need to do is declare some variables. And I have the variable declarations, what we need in a blog post. So I'm going to go ahead and copy from there, and we'll be sure to share the links for the blog post within the video description. Now back into App Designer. Let's paste in our variable declarations. Now, the variable names don't make a lot of sense in our scenario, so let's go ahead and change those. If you remember, we're starting with an outer employee ID and employee, and then internally we're showing the effective dates for the employee. So I'm going to go ahead and change that to empl, and this one here is going to be EFFDT. Fortunately, they're the same types of objects. So we have a JSON object for the external, the outer container, and then we have the JSON array. One row for each, or one element in the array for each effective date. We'll use the same SQL, same employee ID. Okay, next thing we need to do is we need to put some data here into these JSON objects. So JSON empl we'll put, so we'll use the .put method. We'll put employee ID, and we'll put our variable employee ID. In real life, if this were a part of an integration point, an enterprise integration point, we would be receiving that employee ID as part of the request, perhaps. But here we're just hard coding it as a variable, assuming we already have the value from somewhere. We don't need the starts object anymore. We don't need the add property employee ID. We do want the effective date, so let's do the same thing again here. JSON empl.put, and we'll use EFFDT for our same outer node for the effective date array. We'll put the array right now. JSON EFFDT is the name of our array. Now the array at this point is actually empty. You notice we're going to insert items into the array just a little bit lower. What we're really putting into the object is a pointer to the array. So even though it's empty right now, that's okay. When we fill it, it will, of course, when we generate the JSON result at the end, it will be reading from the full array, because right now it's just a pointer to the array. We don't need this anymore. We don't need the end, all of the ends. So let's clean those up as well. Let's see, one thing we do need to do here is inside of our loop, inside our quote SQL cursor, we're going to put into the array. So JSON EFFDT.put, and we're just going to put an effective date for each one of those items. And then finally, let's print our string. Let's see, JSON empl, and method names are case sensitive. We're using Java objects here, and so the people code runtime is actually going to be translating or marshalling method requests between the JVM and the people code runtime. So the method that we invoke here, toString, is actually lowercase t. It's a sort of a camel case used by Java. Lowercase t and a capital S. And we want to make sure that it's case sensitive, or that we're using the proper case. Otherwise, it actually would fail at runtime. Unlike people code, where it will fix up the case for you. Let's see. Oh, now I do have a variable up here declared. We're not actually using it in real life. We probably would populate that with the toString result of JSON impl. Instead here, we're just printing it to the output log. I like what we've got. Let's go ahead and save and validate. Let's see what we get in the validate response. I like that. No results. That's exactly what you want to see in the validate. That means there are no undeclared variables, etc. Let's see. Let's run our app engine. Let's see what happens. Fingers crossed, right? Let's run it. Make sure that the code actually runs. Then let's see it finished up. Let's go to our temp folder and look at it. It was just generated, looking at the clock there. It ran to success. Why am I surprised? Okay, let's test this code here. Let's throw it into JSON lint. Make sure that it is truly valid JSON. I like it. Good. Now let's throw it into a JSON formatter, because I think sometimes it's nice to see what it looks like in a JSON formatter. I'll paste this code in here. This is the JSON that I just generated, and you notice it's showing me the result here. Interesting thing, the result that I pasted in here looks identical to what we used from what was output by the JSON builder, as it should. I mean, I asked it to build the exact same structure. Now let's compare the code as well. I'm kind of curious, from a side-by-side comparison, how does the code we just wrote that uses Java objects compare to JSON builder? So I have here in Visual Studio Code, I have the old code, the prior code listing from JSON builder, side by side with the JSON object that we just created. Now looking at the code listing, 17 lines and 22 lines, and the difference there, what is that, 5 lines or so? So this one is shorter. We don't have I guess you could attribute that to the no ifs and no end ifs. So it's a little bit more terse. Usually I like that. What we're missing though is the indentation showing us the structure of the hierarchical structure or hierarchical nature of the JSON object that we're creating. We don't see that on the other side. Now in this case, the terseness, the shortness of the code actually makes up for and adds to the clarity. Perhaps what's taken away by the lack of indentation is made up for in clarity and shortness, brevity of the code. I like brief code. Maybe perhaps with a larger example, maybe the indentations of the JSON builder might actually be better. I don't know, that's hard to say. But anyway, looking at them, I like features of both. I like the brevity of the one side, but I like the indentations of the other. Now, what about performance, usability? Are there any other impacts that we should be considering? Well, from a performance perspective, we definitely have to throw a lot more data through this to see what's going on. On the one side, on the Java side, it's marshaling that through the JVM. So there may be, well, clearly there's going to be overhead there. I don't know from the the JSON builder, the create JSON builder, we don't actually know the implementation behind that. I mean, there are times where people code functions actually do their wrappers around Java definition. So we don't actually know if there is a difference here in this one. We don't have enough of the implementation details to know. Now, what about battle tested? Which one's stronger? Again, we don't have enough details to know that either. I do know that the JSON classes, the PeopleCode JSON classes, are used with Elasticsearch. That's the primary mechanism used to generate requests to Elastic as well as to parse the response back from the Elasticsearch server. So that's a lot of data transferred there. That tells me that it's been tested pretty well. I'm feeling pretty confident about that. Now on the Java object side though, for the JSON.org JSON classes, they've been around about as long as JSON has been, well, since we discovered JSON. So it's hard to say from that perspective which one would be stronger. I'm almost going to leave it up to personal preference. Now I will tell you this though, that the JSON builder classes and the JSON classes, I've seen a lot of people complaining about those in forums and other discussions, and I'm sure that's merited. The things that I hear are inconsistencies in the way the JSON is being generated. Perhaps the JSON isn't always generating true JSON. I mean, I know I've seen that myself. And another situation that I've seen is where the JSON objects delivered with PeopleCode, may throw some errors that seem to be consumed, or we might say eaten. So there's failures and we don't really get a report back of the failures. Now, clearly we may be using it incorrectly. We don't know. We're just going off the documentation that we have available to us. So it's hard to say. And then again, these classes that we're using, it's hard for us to really judge the PeopleCode delivered classes because they're delivered specifically for Elasticsearch and they work incredibly well for that use case. When we start using them outside of Elasticsearch, we're taking them beyond perhaps maybe what they originally intended, what the original design was. So if you do have issues, as always, be sure that you're filing support cases because Oracle fixes what gets reported and based on the numbers. So we want to make sure that we're reporting issues if we do see issues with those, rather than maybe perhaps just falling back on something that we do know well, such as the JSON.org Java classes. Now, we teach both of these options and some more options in our 3-day Integration Tools update course. So be sure to visit our course catalog online regularly to check for updates. And you can also follow our LinkedIn company page to receive updates whenever we post new live virtual courses. Now, if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe for more content. And we look forward to seeing you in the next episode.